but it depends.
Okay.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast. I am very excited today to have with me Alan Berg, who is a sales strategist and expert. He has done over 100 2020 presentations. Okay. So, not lifetime presentation, but helped over 10,000 businesses and presented in more than 14 countries. And he's going to be joining us today to talk a little bit about all of your sales questions and also explain how he's grown his business and kept it thriving even in a pandemic. So welcome, Alan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ashley. How you doing?
Good, good. It's so good to have you here. So tell us a little bit about what you do currently, what your business is currently, and how you got into speaking in general.
Oh boy. So what my business is, I'm an expert on the business of weddings and events. And actually, I don't even speak about weddings or events. I speak to people who do them. So if you are a venue or a caterer or a DJ or a photographer or an officiant or invitations or a dress shop, you are my audience. But I'm speaking to you about the business side of what you do, because so many people in the wedding and event industry are creatives. And creatives are great. We need creatives, but creatives doesn't mean you have business skills.
Right.
So the way I got started is over 25 years ago, I was selling wedding advertising and then publishing 2 wedding magazines. And I noticed that these creatives, great people, fantastic technicians at what they do, but they were really struggling in their businesses. And kind of selfishly, if they're struggling in their business, they're going to cancel their advertising with me. That's not a good thing. So the guy that owned the magazines before I did, who was my best friend, I was working for him, then bought the magazines. He would hire somebody to come in and teach, to speak about marketing and sales. And I'd watch and go, I could do that. Right. Yeah. I could do that. And I did it because I didn't want to pay somebody else. I'm like, hey, I could do this. And I know this stuff. I can teach you that. My degree is in marketing and accounting. I could do this. I know business, fill in the blank, photography, video, catering, whatever. So I started speaking to my advertisers. And so we published wedding magazines for 5 years. And then there were franchises. The franchisor wanted me to come work for them and run their sales team on the Northeast, everything from Boston down to DC. So we sold the franchises back to them. I went to work for them, and they 4 months later got bought by The Knot, theknot.com, which was magazines and websites at the time. I started out as a regional sales director from the Northeast through the East Coast and ended up as vice president of sales and 4 other vice president titles while I was there for 11 years. And almost immediately after The Knot bought the company, the vice president at the time said, hey, there's this thing in New York at the Central Park Boathouse, and you're going to go represent us there. Now, he should have done it because he was the head of sales at the time. I ended up being head of sales, but he was head of the sales. And he's like, you're going to do that. And I was like, okay. So I went. Now, the interesting thing, Ashley, is all along this, and then you fast forward, I became the main business speaker for The Knot. I never considered myself a speaker. I had an identity. I had a title. I had a business card, right? It said, you are vice president of sales. But I spoke. And it wasn't until 2007 when I got off stage up in Montreal, Canada. Somebody said, hey, Alan, that was a great speech. You're a great speaker. Are you a member of the National Speakers Association? And I did the kind of, my friend calls it the Scooby-Doo, like, what's that? And why would I care, right? The Speakers Association, right? Why would I care? I'm vice president over here, right? And he said, you should just go look it up. And I went and looked it up, and I'm looking at the criteria. You have to be a professional speaker to join. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not a professional speaker. Now, mind you, I had been speaking at that time for probably 10 years, right? Doing presentations. And I looked at one of the criteria was that as part of your salaried position, you give X number of speeches a year to groups of X number of more. And it was either 12 groups of 20 or 20 speeches to groups of 12, whatever it was, I did it. And I was like, that's me, right? I qualify, I guess. So I filled out the application and I get accepted, went to my first speaker conference. And I got to tell you, I don't know what was in the Kool-Aid they were drinking, but I took the whole picture and I went, this is all for me. And what I realized is that speaking was a craft and that you can learn that craft just like you can learn any other craft, that you can work on that skill. And I had been doing it just kind of myself haphazardly. And what I learned to do was, wow, you can actually go network with other people who are like you, who understand what it's like to spend 20, 30, 40 hours crafting a speech, who understand what it's like to, to write a book, which I hadn't written a book at that time. And it was really just enlightening for me. And that speaking became even more important to what I did. So I was the main speaker there for 11 years. I started doing webinars in 2007. Which is really interesting because back then, Ashley, you had to explain to somebody what it was. Like you're going to do a what? I'm going to do a presentation. Where do we go? In front of your computer. How? Right? Like now we just take it for granted. You're going to click a link and there it is. But back then I had to research platforms and we were using WebEx and all this kind of stuff. And so I've been speaking now for since the late 90s, right? So it's a long time. At National Speakers Association, I've been a member since 2007. So what is that going on? 14 years now, I guess. The highest earned designation for a professional speaker is the Certified Speaking Professional through National Speakers. I got mine in 2014. And then I got my Global Speaking Fellow, which there's only about 36, I think there's 36 of us in the world, through the Global Speakers Federation in 2018. So you have to speak in at least 5 of the UN designated areas of the world and already have the Certified Speaking Professional or the equivalent in other countries. There's, a similar thing. Mm-hmm. So I've presented for people in more than those 14 countries, but I've physically been on the ground in 14 countries. I did a Instagram, Facebook Live for a group of wedding planners in Peru in Spanglish. So if I want to throw another country in there, I can do that. But it's just amazing how the world just has gotten so much smaller physically when I was traveling, and now with what happened to us last year, I've been presenting to people all over the world, sitting here in New Jersey.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we're going to get into it because it sounds like you've definitely had a robust career, and in looking at your speaking topics and the things that you speak to clients on, a lot of it is sales. And I know for a lot of speakers who are listening, that is the biggest piece of what they are working on in their business. It is, I feel like if you want to be a professional speaker and get paid to get on stages, you're really saying that you want to be a professional salesperson that gets you paid to get on stages. In the beginning, almost 95% of it is sales work, sales, prospecting, marketing, etc. And the number one question that I get as a speaking coach is, where do I find paid engagements? And I have a background in sales, inside and outside sales, and we called it prospecting. For speakers, how does that process look if they are really looking to get paid to speak for less? And I'll make it really specific because this is essentially who most of my clients are trying to speak to. Not enterprise businesses, but those middle market companies, mid-range enterprises like 50 to 500 employees. Mm-hmm. Where should they start with finding them? Do you recommend buying lists, or do you recommend doing the individualized research or having a member of your team do it? And what does that look like?
I guess the buying list thing comes down to what industries you're looking for, because some you're going to get better lists than others. Mm-hmm. There's 4 steps to getting more sales in almost any business. The first one is what we're talking about, is getting their attention, right? So first you get someone's attention.
Yeah.
Then you have an inquiry. They make an inquiry, then, unless it's cold calling, and then you have a conversation, and then you make a sale. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? You could be dog grooming. It's exactly the same thing. So the first thing, and you kind of identified it, you're narrowing down who is my client there. There are 3 things that matter when it comes to understanding the avatar of your client or your ideal client. So we have geographics. In other words, where do you want to speak? Is it you want to speak where you can drive within an hour? You want to speak, like, again, I speak all around the world. You want to speak in English speaking countries, or for me, it's, English and Spanish speaking countries, right? You have to identify geographically, where are my people? The second thing would be demographically. So what do you know about them? So you said, 50 to 100 employees, but that's still a lot of companies. So 50 to 100 employees who do what? Who sell plumbing supplies, 50 to 100 employees who manufacture X, who are in a service business, who are attorneys, who are doctors, right?
Right.
Because we're not I don't even know, I'm not going to say the Walmart, right? Nobody does business with everybody, right? Seth Godin says you want your tribe, right? Who's your tribe there? So like for me, I've chosen, as a matter of fact, 2013, I went to a speaker conference and I had one goal. Do I want to walk out of here and say, I want to niche my business, that I'm the wedding and event industry guy? Or do I want to be a guy that speaks about sales and about websites and stuff like that? Because that's too open, right?
Right.
Everybody needs that. And I got to tell you, some people have read some of my books that are not in my industry, or their partner or spouse or whatever is in the industry. And they're like, oh, let me read that. I'm like, huh, if I change that word wedding to this, it applies to me. Well, yeah, because sales is sales, right? And marketing is marketing. But if you cannot identify your audience, so I said there were three things: so demographics, geographics, and then psychographics.
Yep.
Right. So how do they think? Or better yet, what problem do they have that you're going to solve? Because people will spend money faster to eliminate negatives and problems than they will to get positives. So if I tell someone, hey, I can help your team sell more.
That is very good. I just want to make sure no one misses that. People will pay faster to get rid of negatives than to feel positives. That's so true. Oh, that's so good.
Right. Well, so you think about it. If they have a problem, right? Like somebody said to you, hey, Ashley, you know what? You live in a house. It's a little bit older. You might want to change some of those pipes, before you have a problem. You'd be like, yeah. All right, I'll get to that. You got a pipe leaking? You're calling the plumber now.
And you're paying whatever they say pay. It's so true, because we actually, to that point, we bought our house 2 years ago. And it wasn't until the pandemic that we were like, all right, we need to get our basement redone because we need more space in this house. We're going to be here all day, every day. The very office that I'm sitting in has been here. It was just nothing before the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, we're like, all right, well, we're not moving. But we 100% need to change everything about this basement, and I'm going to pay whatever contractor comes by and can do the job.
Right. Because I need it now, right?
Because I need it now.
And when you need it now, you need it now. So I have lights on here that are mounted on the walls. Well, the beginning of the pandemic, they were on stands. Because I had the lights. They were in a closet and whatever. I traveled all the time. And if I needed them, I pulled them out. Yeah, no big deal. Well, after the stands weren't going away and my wife tripped on them for I don't know how many times, she's like, all right, you know what? You got to do something with these. So now they're mounted on the walls, because all I have to do is walk over and flip a switch and I have 900 watts of LED lights going on here and it gets warm in here. But that's okay. So
I do like what you said. So you said the demographics, geographics,
psychographics.
Okay. Was there a fourth one?
No, it's those three things. Okay. So psychographically, it's what problem do you help them solve, or what problem can you help them see that they don't even realize that they have, right? And then they're going to want the positive. So we want to be targeting the right people, kind of like fishing. You have to find the right lake that has the right fish and then use the right bait to catch them, right? To attract them. So too many people say, well, I want to work for companies that have 50 to 100 employees. Okay, great. Where? Now with Zoom, it may or may not matter, but I can tell you, I got an inquiry today from a company in New York, and I live in New Jersey, so it's not that far away. And I'm not going to assume that they want me to do a Zoom. I don't know that I want to go on site, although I did get my first dose of vaccine yesterday. Yay. So
congrats. Those are hard to come by.
Thank you. As I said to a friend of mine, it is one of the few perks of a pre-existing condition, right? He said there are others. I said, well, maybe not, but okay, there's one. There's one you can get up higher on the list. So I didn't assume one way or another. I went back to them and asked them. They reached out to me. See, this is important. When somebody reaches out to you, the question is, first of all, how did they get to you? Because there's a big difference between Googling something and trying to look for someone who does something like what you do, or saying, I'm looking for Ashley Kirkwood, right? Because if I'm looking for you, I want what you bring. I want the results that you're going to provide. If they Google, they want someone.
Exactly.
And there's a big difference between those things. So I have a pretty good idea how they reached out, because I responded to her and she didn't give me much. Filled out a contact form on my site, which is real short. But in her reply to me, because I asked her one question, that's a whole another story, wrote a whole book about that. She came back and said, I saw you speak at this conference last year. Okay. So now I know how she came through to me. Now, what I don't know is this. Why did she contact me today?
Right.
Why not yesterday? Why not 2 months ago? Why not last year? Right? She contacted me today because she is feeling a pain. She
Yeah.
has a problem. She needs me to solve that problem. And she's thinking, I have this problem. Who do I reach out to? Now, did she also just read something about me in her industry newsletter, right? Or did she see an email? Is she on my email list? Right? All these possibilities. But she came to me, and what I want to find out is what is that pain that she wants me to get rid of?
Mm-hmm.
Because she's going to pay money to have me get rid of that pain. So I asked her, what are the biggest concerns that she wants my help with? And she came back and sent me bullet points.
That's
Right?
gold that she sent those back.
Right. So I'm looking going cha-ching, right? Because she's telling me what her problems are, and I'm looking at her problems, and the first thing I'm doing is this. Am I the right guy to solve them?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm not, I'm going to say, I know someone who is. My friend Ashley is. My friend John is, right? I'll refer you. So if I am the right guy, I'm like, well, I want to solve her problems now because she wanted me. She's coming to me. So this is not prospecting because she came to me. However, what I did was I stayed top of mind to her through my emails that I send out. If she's on my list, I have thousands of people on my email list, through my social posts, right? Through if her industry wants an article for their, monthly newsletter or magazine or whatever. Yes, absolutely. Here you go. Because I want to be in front of other people's audiences because my audience already knows about me.
Right.
I want to be why am I on here with you? Because there are people that are tuning in that don't know me.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know what? If you're not in my industry and you're like, listen, this is helpful stuff, but I don't need you. I'm not going to buy your book. Okay, that's cool. Great. But there might be somebody listening who's like, and I've had this happen on many podcasts. So let's talk about prospecting for a second. If we look at geographics, I want people in this area, right? And this area could be the whole United States, could be North America, could be the world, right? Or like I said, English-speaking countries, Spanish-speaking countries. I'm doing French lessons now, so I'm trying to add on those as well.
Well, I did have a question even before we get to prospecting, because you brought up a great point about who exactly do you want to speak to. And I typically tell speakers, you want to look at your expertise first and foremost. What is it that you're going to sell them? What's your product? What's your speech or transformation you can help them get? But even after that, I think it is hard when you're first starting out to figure out who has the money and who should I be targeting? Because even if you look at, you can either do it by having a very narrowed topic, or I think you can do it by having a really narrowed target. So what are your recommendations for that? So, we've had a few for my business, we've had a few pharmaceutical clients in the insurance industry. If we just wanted to go all in on the pharmaceutical industry, which is what we're exploring now, because we enjoy working with those types of clients, would you recommend going narrowing it down by industry, or would you recommend keeping a wide industry lens, but maybe you narrow your specific topic down to a particular department? So you only speak to sales directors through X, Y, and Z. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know a lot of people are like, I'd love to be narrow. I just don't know exactly what are the steps I should take to get as narrow as possible.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been interviewed on the National Speakers Association podcast a couple of times, and somebody said, Alan, your niche is an inch wide, but it's a mile deep.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't realize how deep it was, but it got deeper and deeper the more I narrowed that. Now, truth is, in my industry, the average wedding has 12 to 14 different services that they use. So even though I call it the wedding and event industry, which is a narrow industry, mind you, in the US alone, people spend $50 to $60 billion a year on that little narrow industry, but still, it's a narrow industry. But within there are more niches. So there are the venues, the caterers, the photographers, whatever. So I speak to all of them, but then I also focus within that on specifically, like I was telling you before, I have, this book over here, Shut Up and Sell More Weddings and Events. There's an edition just for DJs. There's another edition just for caterers and venues. I speak at conferences just for bridal shops, right? So there's still niches within that. So here's what I would say is the narrower the focus, the more your expertise can shine, because you're not a generalist anymore.
Right.
You're a specialist. And the more those people, like you said a couple of things very important when it came to like pharmaceutical companies, you're working with them because we enjoy working with them. right? If you don't enjoy it, if it's nails on a chalkboard for you, I got to tell you, I love my industry. I love the passion of people that want to help people have amazing weddings. I've been in the industry long enough that I can speak their language. And this is something, again, you're speaking to pharmaceutical reps. You not only need to speak their language, you need to understand the legalities of it. I actually turned down a gig years ago when it was in the medical field. Someone, and this is perfect story, someone whose daughter works for a venue out on Long Island in New York, who I spoke for. I did a day of sales training for their venue. She's seen me speak. She bought my books. Her father gets my books, not in the industry. He works for a company, a hospital group, and his charge is the laboratory part of that hospital group. So they compete with LabCorp and Quest and stuff like that. And he wanted me to come and speak to their reps. And this was going to be a very high paying gig.
Right.
And I wasn't the right guy because I know in New York, and you know this with pharmaceutical reps, I can't bring you a pen with my company name on it. Right. But there's other stuff I don't know. And I don't want to walk in there tripping on stuff and have them going, no, you can't say that here. You can't do that here. Now, people do that in my industry, right? They come in.
That industry has changed a lot. And I don't even remember. I remember I had an aunt who was a pharmaceutical sales rep, and we used to be able to go to the lavish this and the lavish that, and it's changed so much. I feel like a pin should be okay. I think if you can keep it under $25, I think that may have been it. But you never know, because even with government entities, like when I was a federal law clerk for a federal judge, you couldn't even pay for coffee. So you have to be careful. But I think clients are a little more forgiving about that type of stuff. But that is a very good point.
Well, here's the thing. You don't get credit for getting it right. You lose points for getting it wrong.
Right.
Like no, I go into a venue and I'm looking around. I'm looking for deferred maintenance and things that a client might notice. So I look at the lights, and nobody ever said, "Do you realize every light bulb is working in your chandelier?"
Right.
Nobody ever said that.
So
but there's one bulb out, and you know this, right? There's one bulb out. What do you start doing? Looking for the other ones that are out.
That's so true. And it can be distracting. And that is one of the things about the sophistication of your audience and what they know when you're speaking to a room full of doctors, or this happens a lot when people who want to target attorneys. When you speak to people who criticize things all day, like, it is just extraordinarily difficult to get them on your side, because they're hypercritical, especially of non-legal professionals that come and speak to lawyers, even though they get paid to do it all the time. It's just the audience, because I remember being in the audience, is hypercritical. So you just have to, and that goes back to your point about liking it, because we have a lot of fun speaking to colleges. We're doing a couple of colleges coming up, and because our presentations are very specific to me. So we have the love method of communication and the currency of confidence. Okay. Those are our two. We do one or two, though. That's what we do in the organization. So it's very specified, but it is audiences are very different. The collegiate audience is extraordinarily different from the corporate audience.
Well, and it's funny, because I always tell people, other speakers, I know that I'm still relevant because the younger people in my audience, which are millennials still, they're not Gen Z yet, but the millennials will come up to me after or message me after whatever and go, "Wow, you blew my mind. That's so great." Right? Because if the 50 somethings are telling me that, my clock is ticking and I'm in trouble. Right. But if they're telling me that across the generations, my message translates. I actually do a presentation called "How to Be the Experienced Wedding Pro Without Sounding Old." Because people do things to trip themselves up, right? It doesn't matter how old I am if I'm bringing you value. But if the first thing you think of is how old is he, then I'm tripping myself up. Again, this is getting it wrong as opposed to getting it right. So the lingo is important, because the credibility that you get, if you stand up in front of the lawyers and you drop in some things that are lawyer stuff, they're going to be like, okay, now the key is you got to know what you're talking about. And this is something you speak to speakers, and anybody who's listening who's a speaker or aspiring speaker. You are a subject matter expert if you can get off the stage and continue the conversation you had on the stage without any notes, without any slides, without any help. Right? Then you are truly a subject matter expert, because the presentation was part of your knowledge. It wasn't the extent of your knowledge.
Yes.
And too many people get off stage and then you ask a question and they don't know because they were basically reading a script.
Yeah.
And you've lost all your credibility then.
And now you really can't even get away with that, because with virtual presentations, there's going to be a Q&A. So they're going to want to know follow-up questions or additional questions, or they're going to want to probe deeper into that study and learn what you think about it, not just, you know, and that goes to getting back to writing white papers and doing things of that nature that continue to show your expertise, especially if you're going to go in the corporate space. I think those things are very, very, very helpful.
Right. Again, all this stuff adds to your credibility. You know, I remember when I wrote my first book, I was like, okay, I wrote a book. And then I'm thinking, but does that make me any special? Because I wrote a book. You know, a lot of people can write a book. And then I published my second book. I was like, okay, I kind of feel like an author now. You know, by 5 books in, 2 of them in their second edition, and todos mis libros disponibles en español, you know, I feel like, all right, I'm an author. You know, I'm an author. I've written 5 books. They're in 2 languages. I did them all on Audible myself. So they're in audio, they're in Kindle, they're in everything over there. But everything in those books, I write my books the way I'm speaking to you right now. Yeah. And they're very easy. They're very easy to read because I equate it to the movies. You know, when you're watching the movies and somebody's reading something and you hear the voice of the person who wrote it. That's what I want when someone reads my book. The English is not perfect. It's conversational grammar. I know that my high school English teachers would not be happy with my books, but that's okay because I don't speak in perfect English. So therefore my books. Now I do change a few things. I don't like the way gonna looks in writing. So I change it to going to. It's just, even when I'm doing closed captioning,
but I think your books are probably with the reader at the center. Because I remember when we wrote the law school, when I wrote the Law School Hustle, it was for law students that needed to get better grades in law school. It was a very simple message. It needed to be in my tone and voice. And all the books on law school success that I had seen prior to mine were written by professors, which is like, okay, this is not going to work. Like, yes, we care about what the professor thinks, but we need the real deal information about how do you do well. And for me, my story of going from a 2.1 to getting a near perfect GPA from Northwestern Law School was one that resonated in a way that if I were just saying, oh, I'm a PhD from X, Y, and Z, and I'm the professor, like, no, it doesn't hit the same way. So I do think that having a conversational book is not only appealing to a reader, but it should be encouraging to people listening that you can write a book in the way that you speak, and it will do very well. People will be excited to buy it, and it'll still be a great sales and marketing tool for you as you grow your speaking career.
And remembering that the same thing, though, your audience is not everybody who goes to Amazon.com or into Barnes & Noble.
Exactly.
Target your audience. Now, and then again, for credibility, I can't tell you how many people in my industry think that I have been a wedding photographer or a wedding DJ or whatever, or have owned a venue or sold at a venue because I speak their language so well. And the thing is, I don't have to have done it because I tell people, it's actually a great story. I was in the UK doing a mastermind day for 10 disc jockey companies, right? So there's 11 of us sitting around a boardroom table all day. At the end of the day, we're walking out and one of the guys said to me, so Alan, how long have you been a DJ? I said, well, I've never been a DJ. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I don't know how else to say that statement. I've never been a DJ. He said, but you know my business better than I do. I said, you're right, I do. I can't be a DJ though, but I do know your business better than you because being a DJ is another skill, mixing and knowing the right music and all that. But I could sit in a DJ's office right now and make the sale for them, but then they have to do it. I can't fulfill that, right? I could sit in a caterer's office and sell for them, but I can't cook the food. I don't have to. I don't have to do that, but I have to be able to speak their language. And I go to dress shop, right? Yeah, I go to dress shops and speak about décolletage and bodices and silhouettes and like things I shouldn't know about, right? But it's okay because they know when I'm using their language, they're like, and I know what those things are, right? So I can back that up. And I know what a 3-chip CCD HD camera is, right? I know that stuff enough. I just know enough. But the customer doesn't need to know that. The customer needs to know what are the results that this company is going to provide for them that they're not going to get anywhere else. Right? So like if somebody hires you, You're going to provide results. Somebody else will provide results. They might both be good results, but they're going to be different.
Right.
Do they
Exactly.
want your results? And with speaking, you have to look at the problem that the audience has, or the concerns that the audience has that you're going to solve. You have to be able to deliver it in a way that they're receiving the message, right? Like you said, it's the right language, it's the right tone. It's you writing a book for other law students. You have a credibility there. That's great. But and I know, just because you're a subject matter expert doesn't mean you can make a presentation. There's just way too many people that cannot get their message across because they're not speakers. Do you do audiobooks at all? Do you listen to audiobooks?
I do. I'm listening right now to the E-Myth. So I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
The E-Myth Revisited or the original E-Myth?
Revisited.
Yeah, okay. I did that one too. There are some people that shouldn't read their own audiobooks, right? Right. There are some people that it's great. There are some people, every once in a while, I would listen to one and go, you probably should have had somebody else read that. Just you're not dynamic. Because let's face it, an audiobook, there's no video, right? You cannot see the face. You get no facial expressions, anything like that. It's hard. It's
really
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And not
that I like, especially when it's written by a celebrity. I like when they read their own book. So I liked 50 Cent's book. I liked Gabrielle Union's book. I just think I like Gabrielle Union. I think she has a really good voice in general, but she sounds exactly like in all of her movies, same. In her book, same. It literally felt like her just talking to you through her book. So that was a value add on that one.
And there's the consistency again. I tell people, if you have seen me speak and you don't like that voice and that tone, don't read my books because you're going to get the same thing. The other side of it is, if you've listened to one of my audiobooks and you like that tone and voice, you're probably going to like my presentations because that's what they are. I only have one thing I can be unique on, and that's being me.
Right.
And so the one thing I own that nobody else can have, right? They can have a beard and they can, go bald, right? But they can't be me. And my tone, I actually got a great compliment the other day. Somebody posted a review after a webinar I did. He said, I figured I was going to get on for about 15 minutes and then I would tune out. 90 minutes later, when we ended, he's like, whoa, I was on here for 90 minutes. And that's one of the ultimate compliment. Somebody just thinking, oh, I'm going to tune out, right? Nobody's going to keep my attention that long. I did a masterclass last week for over 5 hours. I had 15 people on Zoom for over 5 hours. I can keep your attention.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So that makes a lot of sense. And I did want to get back to, because you mentioned being you, that's the only thing you can do. And I think for people who are like, okay, but what if being me doesn't mean that I'm great at sales? How what are your tips on prospecting tangibly? Are there any tools that you recommend for finding the leads after you've narrowed down who you'd want to target? Who do you recommend, or what resources would you recommend they go to find the actual contact information for the people that they're looking to connect with?
Okay. So obviously one thing in the speaking industry is some people use other people to sell for them, like speakers bureaus and stuff like that.
Right.
So the other thing is, once you've figured out who your audience is in your niche, you could also research speakers bureaus and see, are there any that target my industry? And could I find somebody else that maybe could do the sales? And then I also know speakers that hire people to do the sales for them because they just know that's not their thing. Mm-hmm. It's not their thing. They hate it. It doesn't bring them joy. There they go. So what you want to do is you want to leverage tools like LinkedIn and other tools like that, where you want to find who's the decision maker. So the good news these days is so many people are sharing so much about their companies. So if they're doing training, if they're doing, conferences or whatever, it's probably on their website in a PR page. It's probably on their social media. And you might be able to find, what type of events they're doing, how often they're doing them, and the people that are involved in those, right? Because, a company that's got 50 to 100 people probably doesn't have a dedicated PR person and all that stuff on staff. They're not a big enough company. Right. If you're talking about thousands, okay, yeah, they're going to have a department like that. But that's important. It's important to know your industry and understand, who is doing the hiring of something. Do they have an HR department, or is that the owner's wife, or husband? Right? Because that's important to know as well. And then again, I said this before, the first step to getting more sales is getting their attention. How are you going to get their attention? So I actually love direct mail. I love direct mail because nobody's using it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
But when I do direct mail, it's not like here's a letter folded and put into an envelope, right? It's like here's a flashlight in a white tube, and the outside of the tube has a label that says "Open for a bright idea." And you're going to get a series of 4 emails that go along with that. The first one being the day I mail it to you, it would say, Ashley, subject line would be, watch your mailbox. And then inside it would say, hey, Ashley, watch your mailbox for a white tube coming from me this week. Enjoy. Just tease. Right?
I like that.
Then the day you get it, I send you an email, subject line, did you get it? And then inside, I'm selling sales training, right? So inside it would say, hey, Ashley, the first step to getting more sales is getting noticed. That's why I sent you the tube and the flashlight. Now that I have your attention, wouldn't it be a bright idea to bring me in to train your sales team? Right? So that's the second email. Then I'll send you another email a few days later as a follow-up. It'll say, do you remember getting it? And then I'll send you another one after that, because remember, I'm selling sales training. So I have to show you that I'm practicing what I preach. So I'm going to send you another email later. And that subject line is going to be, how persistent is your sales team? Because that's now the 4th email I'm sending you. And there's a flashlight you already got in the mail. And then I'm going to go on from there. And then there's another one that I send after that one, which is a little bit more funny, because your subject line and who it comes from are important. If you are emailing people, they are looking at your subject line and the email address that it's coming from to decide whether to even open it.
Yep, they are.
So I want to do is I want to get you to look at that subject line and go, stop, right? My inbox is like a waterfall, right? It just keeps emails keep coming in. How do I get you to stop and even look? So if you get a subject line that says, watch your mailbox, that's not normal, right? You get one that says, did you get it? Do you remember getting it? How persistent is your sales team? And then my 5th email, the subject line is R2, D2, and C3PO aren't responding. And you're going to be like, what? What's this Star Wars thing in my inbox? And inside it, it's going to talk about how, hi, Ashley. In my case, I'm following up with people that had inquired about having me do training, but had never done it or speaking. Hi, Ashley, you reached out about having me do training and I haven't heard back. So I can only imagine it's one of these reasons. Bullet points. Number 1, your sales team is selling so much and profiting you so much, you couldn't possibly have me teach them anything else. Number 2, you want to know when I can come. 3, you think it would be valuable, but it's a little out of your budget. You want to know about group training. And number 4, Imperial forces have you pinned down and you want me to use the force to save you. Right? So I'm going to do something humorous to get you to just stop and smile and go, okay, let me go back to this guy. And listen, people ghost you. I don't know if you're familiar with that phrase, but ghosting you. Yeah. So people ghost me on every one of those, but every one of those gets me some responses. Persistence. And here's the most important thing. Are you talking about the problem you're going to solve? And is the timing right? Right. And the reason I say that is somebody might have that problem, but if there's a bigger problem right now, like you have the pipe leaking, that is the biggest problem you have right now. You needed the basement to get done. That was the biggest problem right now. And somebody's like, you want me to mow the lawn? And you're like, I need the basement done. Right,
exactly.
The grass is going to grow, but I need the basement done. So you have to reach out again. You have to reach out again because you might be getting to the right person, just not at the right time. Right. Or you're getting to the right person, but the wrong way. I had one of my clients, his business is going to vineyards. So let's say you owned a vineyard, right? You have Ashley's Vineyard and you're making wine and you have a tasting room and then you have this banquet space. So he, being a left brain analytical, and this is an important point for everybody, not everybody thinks the way that you do. Not everybody sees the world the way that you do. So he, being a left brain analytical, he made up graphs and charts and all kinds of left brain analytical stuff. And he would send it out to Ashley's Vineyard and say, hey, Ashley, look at all these graphs and charts and look how much more money you can make if we sell the banquet space for you. And he was getting nowhere with it. And I'm like, yeah, because they didn't ask for your graphs and charts. And if you're sending graphs and charts to people that are not left brain analytical people, they don't want to read your graphs and charts. So I said, you know what I would do? I would get a dollhouse furniture dining table with little plates and forks and knives and spoons and glasses on it. I would mail that out to Ashley, put that in a box, right? Little dollhouse table, put a $5 bill on it, and then put a note that says, Ashley, how much money are you leaving on the table by not selling enough banquet space?
Mm-hmm.
Now think about that. You get a box in the mail with a dining table with a $5 bill on it with that note. Do I have your attention?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So the question is, what are you doing to get noticed by the right people? So first you have to identify the right people. Buying lists is okay. Make sure that if you're buying lists that they're current, because people change, people move around. The best thing would be, do you know anyone who can refer you to anyone? And back in my prospecting days, a lot of times you can on purpose get to the wrong person in a company because that person can refer you to the right person. Right? I know people that would call up a company and just randomly push some numbers on the phone to get some extension, and somebody would answer, and they could be in tech, they could be in maintenance, right? Didn't matter. Say, oh, hi, I was looking for, and they go, oh no, I'm in tech. You go, really? Well, who is that person, right? And all of a sudden, you're getting all this information because you're past the gate, right? You're past the gate right now. So you can get creative that way. But the introductions are the best way. So this is where LinkedIn or LinkedIn Plus and stuff like that. Who do you know? What is that? Kevin Bacon, right? 6 Degrees of Separation. Who do you know that knows somebody that could refer me to somebody? That's obviously the best. Like I said, I don't want somebody who's looking for someone like me. I want them looking for me.
Yeah. And I think to affirm like content marketing. So the content that you put out can attract the right people to you. And those are always going to be better, not better leads, but those are always going to be people that are more intrigued and more interested. And you're not selling them on you actually being able to do what they come to you for. So I much prefer that. And as your business grows, you may do a lot of the prospecting work in the very beginning, but eventually the referral base should really start to carry the business and get you really, really, really qualified folks. I do think doing a mix of both, like still having a great referral pipeline and also still doing a bit of prospecting is the best way to ensure success long-term, especially when something like a pandemic happens. But I do wonder, have you used any sales tools that have helped really good, or any companies who you found give a higher quality list than others? Because there's just so many people in that space, the Google Chrome extension space and the prospecting space and the companies that can give you list space. Any tools that you would recommend?
Yeah, I don't buy lists personally. I do get lists sometimes when I speak, although the rules on that are different for each conferences. Some of them give you lists, some of them can't. The UK, it's even worse, and it's stuff they're very tight on that. But what you can do is you can be creative with that. So what we didn't talk about is speaking models, which will lead into this for a second. So there are many speaking models. The old speaking model, like old speaking model is you go somewhere, you get paid to speak, right? But then there are many speaking models and hybrids where you speak and you don't get paid much or sometimes anything for speaking, but you have something else to sell them. So if you have something else to sell people, the goal is to get in front of as many of the right people as possible.
Right.
And if the speaking doesn't bring you in much or sometimes any revenue, but you're in front of the right people who can then hire you, well, then that's another model as well, right? There are some speakers that don't charge to get to speak, but they want to get in front of the right audience.
And which model do you predominantly use?
Mine is a combination of them. So I have some companies that pay me to speak, and there is no back of the room sales, no table, cannot mention your products and services, and that's it. Which ironically, the person that inquired today that saw me at a conference last year, again, I've spoken at this conference a bunch of times. That conference is one of those. I have no table, no books to sell or whatever. I speak at that conference. They pay me to speak, and that's it. And yet here I am getting a referral through them. Now, what am I allowed to do? I'm allowed to tell people, hey, if you want to get my free article every month, which is my blog basically, just go to connectwithalanberg.com. Make it nice and easy, reduce the friction. Don't say jump through these 5 hoops. Connectwithalanberg.com takes you right to my MailChimp sign up. There you go. So she's probably on my email list that way. When I speak for some podcasts or industry, a lot of them these days are podcasts as well. If I give away a book, well, now people know I wrote a book, right? Because I'm giving away a book. They let me talk about the book all I want if I'm giving one away for free. So, speakers, your books are the biggest business card you have. right? If I'm on an airplane, actually, there was a time when we were flying, but
Right.
let's pretend like we're on an airplane somewhere without a mask on, and you're talking to the person next to you, and you find out, either they are a prospect or they know somebody, right? Well, I have a choice now. Do I give them a business card? And my business cards are very unique, but do I give them a business card or do I give them a book? Right? Because that business card might get lost, but that book, not so much.
That away, yeah.
Make sure your contact information is on there. When you're doing content marketing, depending upon who you're speaking for, they might just let you, just give you a bio. They might let you have a link, right? They might have a call to action. When I write a blog, there is a physical line at the bottom of the blog, and then there's a call to action below that. Because two phrases that I use all the time are reduce the friction and no dead ends. If you have a dead end, it means somebody got to something of yours and then there was no next step. If there's no clear next step, they're not going to take it, right? This is I had these signs made up I give to my customers here. I don't know if you can see that. Ambiguous next steps bring ambiguous results, right? If they don't know what they're supposed to do next and you didn't make it easy to do that, they're not going to take that next step.
Exactly.
So you want to tell them what to do, but here's the important thing. Don't say, hey, call me. Tell them why. If you're having X problem and this is something that you need fixed, I'm just paraphrasing here, obviously, call, email, or text me. So in my case, it's if you want your sales team to sell more and have more fun doing it, call, email, or contact me. If you're not profiting enough from your call, email, or contact me. If your dog is molting, whatever, right? Call, email. What is the next step and why are they doing it? What is the result that they're going to get? Too many people just list their contact information and they're like, nobody ever contacts me. It's like, well, you didn't tell them to. You just put your phone number there and you put your email, or worse, I'm going to say these days, you had a big button that said, call me. And they don't want to call you. They want to email you. Right. They want to text you. They want to WhatsApp you. I wrote a whole book called Why Don't They Call Me? And it was going to be, it could have been the shortest book ever. Imagine this, Ashley. You get a book, title says, Why Don't They Call Me? You open it up and it says, get over it. Because they don't want it.
Easy for your customers. And I do think that in I don't know if it's the gig economy or what it is, but people have lost the art of customer service overall. And and literally the reason, because our favorite hotel in Chicago is the Peninsula. That's like basically the only place I'll stay at this point. And unless, things may change, but literally they're one of the only hotels that I've stayed in recent times where the customer is still first. Every other place I go, whether it be working with contractors or vendors, etc., people are not, they're not always, and I'm sure there's some that are different, but most people are not building out experiences with the customer at the center. And so everything is like, go through 75,000 steps. We don't have, some people don't even have phone calls anymore. There's no number on your website anymore. You have to email and then get sent to this place, that place, versus just getting your answer. So it's a little bit different though. You do want to make sure that even though we're in the tech age and things are moving faster, you have a customer-centric process, because if you don't, maybe they'll hire you once, but they will not have you back.
Right. So you mentioned my website. I don't know if we were on yet or it was before you said you like my website. When you went to my website, did you understand who I was targeting?
Yes.
So this is another thing. If you look at my website, there's a picture of me speaking right first. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it, it's from behind me. You see the audience.
Yep.
Right. 80% of speakers that you go to their website, it's a, hey, look at me on stage picture. Okay. Yeah. Well, hey, look at me on stage is all about you. Right. It's not supposed to be about you. It's supposed to be about the customer.
Yeah.
So what I do is I ask the photographers, sometimes beg the photographers, would you please go behind me and take a picture? And I remember so many of them would be like, well, why? I was like, because the people coming to my website are the audience. I want them to see themselves. Right. But there you go. The leading international speaker and expert on the business of weddings and events. Pretty clear what I do. Right. But if you notice, right, well, I've added those Zoom pictures there, right? So the mobile and whatever, because I want people to immediately see, yes, he does stuff like that. And people look at pictures before words.
You have a whole section, virtual training and presenting.
There you go. And as you go through the page, there are testimonial quotes, very short, everywhere.
Yep.
Because let me say this. People talk about brands, and I'm sure, Ashley, you've had people on talking about branding and stuff, right? Your brand is different from your branding, right? Scroll down just a little bit more. You see that avatar?
Mm-hmm.
That's branding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to brand my sales training with this avatar called Your Personal Sales Trainer, right? Which yourpersonalsalestrainer.com, of course, right? But your personal sales trainer. So if I'm going to be your sales trainer, there's a trainer guy there. There you go. Looks like me. I had him tone the muscles down a little bit. I didn't want to get people, I didn't want I didn't want to intimidate anybody there. So
for those of you listening, you can go to alanberg.com, ALANBERG.com, and check out the site. You'll see the testimonials. You'll see the consistency in the colors. It's a really beautiful site. I actually complimented him on it before we started the interview.
Thank you. So the testimonials are the brand, the colors, the logo, the consistency of what you mentioned there. That is branding. So my alanberg.com logo is an orange color. So as you go through the site, the dominant color there is orange. The secondary color is a little bit of blue. You're going to see that. But those are not just random oranges and blues. I can give you the hex number, right? When we go into colors, you can get into the hex number. So that's hex number ED8523, orange, right? That orange button is hex number ED8523, and the blue's got its own hex number over there, and there's consistency throughout there.
And is yours pixeled? It looks like it is.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you run ads at all?
I'm sorry?
Do you run Facebook ads?
I have just started doing them.
Nice.
They were mildly successful, but I did it more because my audience needs them. My audience being wedding professionals, they need it. So I want to know how it works. So I'm working with a young lady in where's she, in Colorado, Caitlin Brogan, who that's what she does, is Facebook ads and stuff. So we did a webinar together. We're doing some other stuff there. Nice. But branding, my colors, my logo, stuff like that, or my here's my books behind me, right? There's my branding with my crown of books behind me. My brand is what people say about me after they fill in the blank, hear me speak, have me do sales training, read a book or whatever. Mm-hmm. My brand is the results that I provide. It's not a list of services. Alan does speaking and sales training, whatever. That's services. My brand is what those people have said, but they're on my website there. If they've said, every time I hear Alan, I get something else. So here, I'll give you an example. I showed you that little sign before, ambiguous. Next step. This is actually something, if somebody buys books from me, this goes in the envelope with it. And what's on the back? Testimonials. Mm-hmm. Here's another one I give out. If you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Right.
What's on the back?
True.
What's on the back?
Information.
Testimonials. Why should you have Alan train your sales team? The results have been unbelievable. We're putting your sales principles into practice and certainly seeing the results, right? This is, I could have put over here, why should you have me train your team? Well, I can do this for you. I can do this for you. I can do this. No, I put 4 testimonials of people who've done it. And then a call to action that says, if these sound like the kind of results you'd like to have for your team, call, text, or email me today. There's the call.
That principle extends even beyond the speaking industry, because even for our coaching and training programs, we ran ads to testimonials, to people saying, no, this works. I did what you said and I got this result. I did what you said and now I'm on the New York Times. Now I'm on BBC London. Now I'm booking more engagements than I've ever booked in my life for pay. So I think that principle extends even beyond. It's just not even, like you said, sales, every industry definitely needs to have sales. So I think we've gotten really good tips on prospecting, really amazing tips on how we should be branding our websites and like making the website work for you. So I'm not shocked that hopefully we get that book soon. This has been for sure time well spent, but I did want to get your thoughts even before we closed out. Just one tip you would give to new speakers who are trying to build their brand. What is the one thing you'd recommend that they invest in? Or the number one thing, because there's lots of things.
Yeah. I mean, other than understanding your audience. Anytime somebody says to me, I want to speak more, I said, don't make it about the money. Make it about the value you bring to the audience. If you are clear about the value that you're going to bring to the audience and you know who that audience is, the money will follow. But if you don't know who you want to speak to or what value you're going to bring to them, there's no way you're going to get people to pay you for that.
Right.
So be very clear about the value that you want to bring. And you mentioned the word joy before, right? Make what brings you happy, right? I love speaking to my audience, and it's never about the check. That's the transactional part that happened.
Yeah.
But if I go, and I've had this happen, I actually did a webinar one time for one person. The person that hired me, nobody else from her association showed up live. They were going to watch the recording. I physically did a webinar for one person. It was me and her, right? That was it.
Yep.
And I did it exactly the same way as if there was 1,000 people on.
And that's discipline. Because I've had to show up to an empty room and still do a great presentation and still make sure that it's amazing and impactful and interactive. And that means you have a commitment to excellence that far extends what other people do, like external factors.
I'm going to give you an example, a phrase that I live by. I don't ever want to give the best speech I can ever give, but I do want to give the best speech I've given every time.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next one's going to be better, and the next one's going to be better. And if there's 3 people in the room, they're going to get it all. I went down to Washington, D.C. one time, and they had rigging set up with lighting and stage and all this, and 20 people. That's what they got, 20 people.
Wow.
And at the end of the speech, one of the guys said to me, he said, "Man, you really just brought it." I said,
Yes.
I only have one way to do, and that's everything. I can only give everything every time. And I don't care how many people came, because they came and they deserve everything. Now, if you had 200 people, they would have gotten it too. If you had 2,000, they would have gotten it too. 20 people showed up, they're getting everything. And you know what? Every time you're on stage, it's an audition. Every time, because somebody in that audience could either hire you or could refer you or could see a video or an Instagram post and go, I need that, right? Every time. So, for me, the speaking is about the audience. If I get feedback from people that say, I'm using what you said, this comes back to the testimonials. Yep. I'm using what you said and I'm getting this because of it. And they took it upon themselves to reach out to me and tell me and say, Alan, look what I got from you. I read your book. I got this. Or somebody came to my masterclass just recently, and a couple of days later, she goes, I wrote 4 sales this week because of that class.
Yeah, that is so good. The testimonials, like if you take nothing else from this, get testimonials every time. And if you need something to do today in order to implement, send out a Google form to anyone and everyone that's heard you speak. Have them give a testimonial, ask how they give them a sample testimonial that you would like, and have them answer the questions. Where were they before they heard you speak? Where were they after? And who would they recommend that you speak to, or who would they recommend your presentation to? And then make sure you ask how they would like their name represented and the company that they work for represented on your website. And of course, because I'm a lawyer, get your permission to utilize that particular testimonial. But that's something you can do today via a Google form and send out to your list. And they could have heard you virtually, they could have heard you in person, but you want to make sure that you collect that data. It's so critically important, especially when people are paying you. They want to see where people are at. And we're developing now a pre-event survey and a post-event survey to kind of track and evaluate where people were before they worked with us and where they were at after for each individual presentation, tailored to the presentation that we're going to provide and give. So this has been an amazing time. Hopefully you all got some nuggets and tips that you can take with you well beyond your time with us or listening to the Speak Your Way to Cash podcast. And Alan, where can people find you and see your beautiful website? Tell them how you would like to connect.
It's very simple. AlanBerg.com, ALANBERG.com. Everything you need is there, like you saw up at the top. One thing you pay attention to besides the testimonials is every page, but the homepage has a contact form on the page. You don't have to leave the page there. You can contact me right there. Call, email, text. It's at the top. It's throughout. Some of my pages have 7, 8, 9, 10 calls to action on them. Some of them have 15 testimonial quotes. Single lines, though. I just want to throw this out. I know you talked about testimonials. One sentence. Nobody wants to read your paragraph, right? It's a speed bump in the road. They're going to read it. They're going to go on. If people don't know the kind of results you can provide, they'll find somebody else who does it cheaper. If they want your results, they have to pay your price. That's it. So AlanBerg.com. If I can help you in any way, all my books are there, or shopalanberg.com, reduce the friction. And todos mis libros disponibles en español.
All right. Awesome. Well, Alan, thank you so much for your time. And you guys, if you're interested in the Speak Your Way to Cash Academy, you've heard about that through this program, when I talk about my clients getting success, please do go to ashleynicolekirkwood.com/apply. I would love to read your application and see if it's a good fit for you. If you're a speaker looking to start at the top of the market versus working your way up from the bottom, give me a call. All right. Talk to you guys later. Have a great, great day.